Hi, Premier. Good to have you here in person.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you. Your first conference of the Federation. I wanted to start off on an issue you mentioned in the press conference, and that's around the possibility of expanding the carbon tax exemption to other forms of home heating. You mentioned that you actually started conversations to that effect with the federal government prior to when it all boiled over politically. Yeah. Can you add some meat to the bones and specify exactly what that means?
Well, I think I just respect the confidence of having certain conversations with other people. But basically, I think Manitobans, as with most Canadians, look at the current situation and just say, what about fairness, kind of thing. And so in Manitoba in particular, over the past 5 decades, we've put the down payment and started paying off the mortgage on a low carbon future. And given the inflation and the impact that people are feeling from that inflation these days, I think we need to help people out. We need to help the average family, the average working person, the average middle class family get through this difficult period. And in a province like ours, where we have a lot of climate friendly investments already made, I think it makes sense.
So to be clear, had you been advocating prior to the exemption in Atlantic Canada, for example, for a break on all home heating for the winter, for a year, for a couple years? Like what was the specific ask from your perspective?
Oh, the specific ask for us is to revisit the way that the federal backstop is being implemented in Manitoba. And so this conversation around home heating, I think, gives us the opportunity to bring that forward in a way that I think makes sense for the average person out there. The average person wants us to take action on climate change, but also wants us to help the middle class and working person right now. We just went through an election in Manitoba where we brought forward a lot of issues, including heat pumps, which was the topic du jour.
I was going to ask you about that.
Saw the T-shirt, right, from Premier Evie. But also issues like standing up a hydrogen industry in Manitoba, making sure that there's rebates for plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles. So we have the climate-facing policies, but we also campaigned on a temporary cut to the fuel tax in Manitoba just to help people get through this difficult period. Because I think the overall way forward here, if we want action on climate change, is we need to make the alternatives readily available and affordable, but we need to help people make ends meet right now, deal with the immediate inflationary challenge people are facing.
How do you measure, though, Premier, how acute that affordability crisis is and for how long? So, you've put an amount of time on the gas tax relief, but if the situation hasn't improved very much, like inflation now, the target is a little bit further out from the Bank of Canada than they originally thought. Do you look at the possibility of expanding that? And how long are you looking for a break from the federal government? Like how do you define it?
Yeah, well, I think for now we need to look at that target range of 1% to 3% that the Bank of Canada uses, but I think there should be some flexibility there too. Because there might be a point in the next year or two where inflation has gone down, but interest rates are still high. And we're seeing right now, across the country, Manitoba included, when people have to renew the mortgage, and then they really start to feel the impact of these elevated interest rates. So I guess what I'm saying is we need to find a balance between doing the urgent action on climate change while also helping the month in, month out grind that people are feeling right now with inflation. And I think if we work together across different levels of government and what you saw over the past few days here, different regions of the country, I think we can find that balance.
It doesn't look though like the feds are going to expand that exemption beyond heating oil. In fact, they've been pretty explicit that they're not. Have you heard anything otherwise?
Well, I'm always optimistic that many things are possible through negotiation. And so I think we're definitely going to look forward to future engagement and hopefully move the ball forward here.
When they get questions on it, they often respond with the immediacy of the climate crisis, right? That tackling the impacts of climate change is an incredibly important thing. And it also, there's an intersection with affordability there as well, because the impacts of climate change cost a lot. You've talked a lot about that as well. How do you reconcile for people listening who voted for you thinking that you would be much more stringent on climate change and mitigating the impacts than your predecessor? How do you reconcile relieving the gas tax, asking for more exemptions on the carbon tax?
We earned a mandate on that. This was one of our top 5 commitments on the fuel tax, right? So I think everyone in Manitoba
but now you're asking for something more from the feds.
This was our approach when we came forward. And so what I would say is this: the single greatest threat to us solving global warming is if we lose the working class, is if we lose the middle class in Canada. And right now people are hurting because of inflation. So we need to show flexibility. We need to show that a government like ours, which is committed to solving global warming, is not going to just put you through economic hardship without listening to your concerns. We're actually going to be flexible and ensure that you have the resources to make ends meet month to month and over the long term to be able to save the money necessary so that your next vehicle might be a plug-in hybrid, so that the next investment in your home might be a geothermal heat pump. So I think we have to strike a balance between the climate agenda and helping the working person, helping the middle class through this difficult time.
Let me ask you bluntly then, do you think the federal carbon tax achieves that?
You know, the federal carbon tax is not a silver bullet. We would all want to see a silver bullet on the climate, but it actually is starting to look more and more like it's going to be a whole suite of initiatives on home heating, on electrifying transportation, on different sectors of our economy that when you put them together, serve to reduce emissions, serve to help us solve global warming. And so I think we need to see some data, we need to see some evidence in terms of which of these policies in the toolbox are going to most move the needle to help us solve global warming.
Do you believe in principle, though, on the idea of the carbon tax or the pricing carbon?
Well, there was the argument that this was an economic theory. But what have we seen in practice? Have we seen the greenhouse gas emission reductions over the half decade or so that this policy has been in place? I would like to know the answer to that question. I would like to know how much is a heat pump initiative going to reduce GHG emissions? How much is a rebate on an electric vehicle? How much is action with industry going to move the needle? And then maybe we can have a really strong discussion as Canadians, as Manitobans, about the steps that are really going to help us do our part to solve global warming. Just
before I let you go, I do want to switch gears because healthcare was also a big part of the reason that you were, big part of the mandate you were elected on.
Yeah, that's right.
Discussion going on here, instigated by Premier Houston around not going to other provinces basically to recruit. Do you sign on to that?
I think it's important for our province because the previous government that we replaced was not in the game in terms of recruiting healthcare staff, and so all we were seeing was an outflow. We were losing nurses, we were losing healthcare professionals from Manitoba. So to see this consensus emerge from the other provinces and territories that they're not going to try and poach talent from the neighboring jurisdiction is a positive development for us, because we know that anything we want to do on healthcare, we have to have the staff to be able to deliver that in the form of nurses, healthcare professionals, physicians. And so certainly we're going to work hard on recruitment. We're still going to have a presence at the job fairs at post-secondaries.
But you're not going to go poach someone at a hospital necessarily in another province.
That's the plan, and the focus is now, if we've got a bit of this reprieve agreed to here over the past few days, we can focus on fixing the hole in the bottom of the boat in Manitoba, meaning let's keep those on the front lines working. We're going to bring in the reinforcements, we're going to improve the working conditions, but let's keep those who are on the front lines valued and encouraged.
Okay, I'm out of time there, Premier. I'll leave it there. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.
So much
Great
for
to meet you.
me. Likewise.
Thanks.